Welcome everybody to Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. We have quite a show for you today. Uh, Headlines and scripture and almost everything in between. We're going to be talking about the enigmas of they know that Christians are supposed to turn the other cheek. How much are we supposed to turn the other cheek? I'll be back joining you in just a few minutes. In the meantime, enjoy this blast from the past.
This is the residence of Fred Finchley. He's a family man who enjoys the peace and quiet of his little home. Fred Finchley has a good job.
Ready, look.
And his family enjoys their standard of living. His salary keeps up with the cost of living, and he owns some of those work-saving appliances we all admire so much. Finchley always checks to make sure he gets his money's worth. But after paying his savings account and life insurance premiums, there never seems to be enough money left to pay for that. But there's a time for dreaming and a time for working. So every workday morning, Finchley joins the stream of traffic that flows toward his job. As you can see, Finchley could not be called Hector, but he always gets to work, to write, on time.
Hey! Sorry, $60 a month. Have a cigar. Thanks for the good work, Finchley.
Well, gee, thanks, JB, for the cigar and the raise. $60 a month. Hey, can I use it?
Sure you can, Mr. Finchley. But how?
Huh?
Yes, what will you do with those extra dollars? There are lots of things you could do. Bury it in a tin can in the backyard, for instance. But idle money may in time depreciate. Or you could spend it on a couple of nights out a week with the wife. This seems like a lot of fun. But with this kind of life, you'd depreciate. So why not put your money to work?
Put my money to work.
That's right, Mr. Finchley. You can own a share of American business. There are over 1,200 companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Companies which employ more than 11 million people, produce half of all the goods made in America, and pay about half the nation's dividends. Many of these companies have been paying dividends for 25 years or longer.
Tycoon.
Neither are most of the people who own shares in American business. 3 out of 4 of all share owners are in families which make less than $10,000 a year.
The raise was only $60 a month.
Well, the monthly investment plan is specifically designed for anyone who wants to invest in common or preferred stocks on a pay-as-you-go basis. You can $40 up to $1,000 every month or every 3 months under MIP. So why not a member firm of the New York Stock Exchange and get some practical advice on how to own a share in America's business? And before you invest, investigate.
Yeah, invest. Just think, with $60 a month, I could. Just a moment, sir, if you please. You look like the kind of a man of judgment who knows how to invest his money wisely. Won't won't you step into my office, please? Let me give you a hot tip, strictly confidential. For a limited time only, we are offering to discriminating buyers like yourself a few shares in a world-famous company with mines in Nigeria, Tasmania, Somaliland, and Brooklyn. It's Utopium Unlimited. It glows in the dark. Small investment, big profit. As a special favor, I'll let you have 100 shares for only 40 cents a share. That comes to $40. Plus, of course, $20 for putting you onto a surefire moneymaker. You are now a man of some... Hey, you!
Mr. Finchley, there's a big difference between dealing with a fly-by-night operator and a reputable broker.
Please sit down, Mr. Finchley.
First, tell me, what are you gonna sell me?
Not a thing, Mr. Finchley. As members of the New York Stock Exchange, we are prepared to be of service to you if needed. Every day, member brokers buy tens of thousands of shares of stock. A doctor in Atlanta wants to buy some stock. A farmer in Spokane wants to sell his stock in the same company to get cash, say, for a new tractor. The Atlanta broker for the buyer and the Spokane broker for the seller speed the orders to their exchange members on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. When the floor broker representing the buyer bids the price asked by the floor broker representing the seller, a transaction is made. When you sell securities on the New York Stock Exchange, you can cash by the buyer. Every day, millions of dollars of listed securities are bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange. You can check the price of your stock in a daily newspaper, or by getting the latest market quotation from a member broker like myself.
Well, how do I get the facts before I invest?
Before you buy stock in a company, you'd want to know, among other things, its record of sales. For previous years, what dividends it has paid, and its prospects for the future. Of course, we can't foretell the future, but we can give you many facts and figures to help you select a suitable stock.
Well, how about this monthly investment plan? Maybe I'd want to invest only about $50 a month.
Well, MIP was set up for people who want to buy stocks on a $50 a month can build up quite a little nest egg. Suppose you take a trial run of imaginary investment route. You might start selling for $100 a share. Let's say you invest $50 each month in a stock selling for $20 a share. At this price, your buys almost 2.5 shares the broker's commission. If the price of your stock drops, don't get discouraged. Providing you believe the long-range price trend will be upward. Of course, you can sell at any time. You lose on stock that costs you more than $50 a share. In addition, you'll have to pay the broker's commission on the sale. To continue the plan, monthly payment of $50 buys 3 1/2 shares of stock at $15 a share. $27 a share. If you sell here, you'll have a profit on the shares that cost you less than $27. Your $50 monthly payment buys 1 1/2 shares of stock at the price of $27 a share. Of course, the price of a stock can go down as well as up. But with a long-range monthly investment plan, your $50 a month buys more shares when the price is low, fewer shares when the price is high, to average out the price of all the stock you purchase. You can quit the plan at any time, Mr. Finchley, and take the shares you have purchased. But the idea of the monthly investment plan is to invest every month on a long-range basis in the stock of a company that you think will have good earnings and pay dividends. Take, for example, a company whose stock is selling at $20 a share. If that company, over the past year, paid out $1 a share, the dividend yield comes to 5%. You can keep the cash, or if you wish, the dividends can be automatically reinvested for you. Now, the investment route you're traveling is a good one. because the stock has paid satisfactory dividends. And even with its ups and downs, the long-range price trend has been upwards.
Looks pretty good. Thank you. But before I invest, I'm going to study the facts myself.
That's right, Mr. Finchley. All investors should study the facts carefully before they buy any stock. And remember, the monthly investment plan is designed especially for people who want to invest as little as $40 or $50, as well as for those who want to invest up to $1,000 every month or every 3 months. There are many promising investment routes to travel. Many companies whose stocks are listed on the New York Stock Exchange have helped to build our rising standard of living by constantly creating new jobs, services, and products. Therefore, Mr. Finchley and all those who can assume the risk of seeking dividends and profits can put their dollars to work by owning their share of American business through the monthly investment plan.
Wow. I hope you enjoyed that. I was listening in and trying to find out what that guy was talking about. And it does seem that that's the propaganda, that's the propaganda that everybody was getting in the whatever age that was from, could you tell? Really? 50s maybe? Payroll plans. Hello, Matt G, Angela. I hope the day is greeting you well. Missed everything last night, was going to be on, had a different title, different topic. This whole thing about turning the other cheek and, looking at others as their main concern. That's what's hard, because we're all going through our lives and we've all had, I'm sure, very interesting lives that we want to share with people. And how do we who want to be teachers and stuff, how can you relate to people when you're living your own life, but we need to somehow reach them? And things seem so different between them and us. We were always hearing, Mr. Ed or Mr. Movie Phone, Don Pardo. Wasn't there always somebody that tell us about our next prize? Your prize is a Chevy truck. It's like, thank you, Don Pardo. And they had to introduce him every time. Oh, man. What'd you get in the weeds, Bobby? And Matt G? -2 last night. I hope that's not temperature. A lot of weird things going on in the weather today. Let me see. Share. I have 2 Corinthians 11:21 pulled up. Paul says, to my shame, I must say we were too weak for that. And Paul's context, verse 20 says, in fact, you even put up with anyone who enslaves you or exploits you or takes advantage of you or exalts himself or strikes you in the face. To my shame, I concede that we were too weak for that. When it comes to the Bible, we're going to have to really go back and see what we're looking at. I've got one thing pulled up here. We'll be looking at, did Catholics create Islam? I hope you remember I've recently been discovering there was no Islam, and that it was created after mud flood, something the very eloquent and educated Dr. Weiss. Yeah, these are Seventh-day Adventists. Their number one job is to try to get you to worship on the Sabbath. Try to treat it like it's the Lord Day, like it was taught in Scripture. Which, of course, it's ridiculous to think that. It's not even to be argued. It's like arguing over new moons and festivals and things like that are just forbidden. So we'll be looking at Dr. Weiss. I think I had, there's a video coming up that might be interesting if we're still going live at 7 or at 11 a.m. We might want to check this out. 58 minutes from now, Stellium 7 already has 9 thumbs up. Of course, Nevin's going to be there because he's going to support anybody who loves my theories and doesn't support Jesus Christ. Yeah, the thing is, you think that other content providers like myself don't see your names, and what you study, and you're here, and sometimes it's but that we don't. Like Nevin, I haven't seen Nevin for 5 years. He's ready for anything except Jesus Christ. And I'm very curious to hear Mike's, because I listened to Stellium 7's interview with Andreas Xerxes, which of course is a made up name, and I just don't see how Dr. Wilkerson doesn't know that he's being used by those people. They're not, that Mike is out there working it. I don't know what Andreas has done in the past, but I know what he's doing now, and I know what he's shooting for, and it's anything but Jesus Christ, because I've known him for years also, just like I've known Dr. Mike Stellium 7 for years. We talked on the phone first in 2019. Witnesses, Randy was there. Cell phone logs. I still use the same phone. And I'm praying for Mike. I just don't think he's we're finding out, his father was an actor who got into the whole hippie subculture of California, been raised a vegetarian all his life, really been into, active, first person jailed for hacking. And now he understands that the stones were body parts of titans, and he thinks elephants, but that's not something to sneeze at when those things are going all over the world. So we'll have that to look forward to. Well, we are going to be looking up, is this what I'm looking up? Nibal? A jug of wine, a bottle of wine, a harp, a tambourine, 2 jugs of wine, a lyre, harps, and tambourines. And on the psalteries is what it calls the bottles of wine in the KJV. We'll be looking at these words here. How did I get here? This has been up for a while. Looks like I was reading more of Job. Yes, it was Job. Job 38:37. Well, let's just go down there. We'll start at 36. Who can put wisdom in the inward parts or give understanding to the mind? And we can see the footnote C. Who can put understanding in the ibis or the rooster? Understanding in the mind, because that's what's D. Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can tilt the water skins or the lyre or the harp of the heavens? When the dust runs into a mass and the clouds stick fast together. Reading it as I would if I were Mr. Ed or Mr. Movie Phone. From verse 35, can you send forth lightnings that they may go and say to you, here we are, who has put wisdom in the inward parts, or given understanding to the mind? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can tilt the water skins of the heaven? When the dust runs into a mass and the clods stick fast together. We'll also just try to be reminding that there was something resulted in an anti-Catholic nativist movement. I just, Now the Protestants who could get stirred up against the Catholics, and basically Catholics and Protestants are against any other, they have their own nativist movement now. We're touching on that. Did you see here? What is this one? At this time, all of a sudden, people of Italian, it's prop up at Italy time. And it came it came in the middle of World War II. And for all I know, really, were they pumping up Columbus Day and everything? I know Columbia was a big deal, but Christopher Columbus, when was that made a big deal? Who was propping that up? When and why? Did it have to do with the fact that early in 1942, the United States declared every Italian living in the United States an enemy of the state? At the same time, they were quarantining some Japanese, not all of them, only the ones on the West Coast. The East Coast didn't have to report to concentration camps. Only the Japanese from certain parts of California. Italians were declared enemies of the state. 6 months later, it was like they were ships were blowing up in New York Harbor. The mafia is going like, oh, you want enemy of the state? So boom. And I think I have that pulled up. It's a big deal. So this says why it targeted them during World War II as enemy aliens, because that's how many there were. And even later in the PDF, you'll see that they interviewed 600,000 and they found 280 bad guys. So they said, you know what? You're not all enemies of the state, but keep an eye out. Alien enemy number 33. The United States government requires all aliens of German, Italian, or Japanese nationality to vacate this area by midnight, February 24th, 1942. Go to your local Federal Social Security Board office for details. Francis better check for pictures in case I downloaded any that might help the situation. What's this one? So I had downloaded that one in case we missed it, because I want to remember it's Francis Biddle who was the head of this, Justice Department. And there was this one here. This is a screen cap from when the United States admitted it killed 70 civilians for no apparent reason in Syria. They referred to it as that civilian harm mitigation and response has been looked into. 70 women and children bombed with a 502 2,000-ton bombs. They call that civilian harm mitigation. They want to make sure they don't do that as much. And that's recent. They just admitted it, but that's another thing that happened in 2019. But they were fighting ISIS. So a lot of people think it's okay. No Italians allowed. I think we're out of new pictures. So here's another key address from the Department of Justice Library. Americans of Italian Origin by the Honorable Francis Biddle. And this was in a Columbus Day celebration. Was it the first one? When did they start Columbus Day? Maybe it's been going on forever and they just said, we got to honor this guy. I didn't want the picture. See, when was it initiated? Celebrated in the United States. Only, I guess. Only ones that still buy it, believe it. Oh, it says it took place in 1792. Better known as the Mafia's Tammany Hall, which you can already see it has the Phrygian cap because it was run by the Mafia. That's what Tammany Hall's all about. Catholic Mafia people invading things like Washington did, Thomas Jefferson did, Opus Dei. Of course, the pervert Benjamin Franklin. Well, they're all perverts. It was Tammany Hall. He did it. Boss Tweed, the gangs of New York. Everything was always run by the Mafia. The Mafia set it up and said, isn't this nice? And we help feed the poor. Gonna fly now. Yeah. Flying high now. You don't know how big they were. I don't believe you can fly. So let's go. Graft. Tammany Hall served as the engine for graft, political corruption, the famous Boss Tweed, but it never went away. Started in the 1700s. You were still hearing about him trying to take him down in the night. Oh, who do you think the Mafia people were paying off like Al Capone and those people? The politicians. The FDRs. Tammany Hall's influence waned when they ran up against FDR. It only lasted from 1785 to 1945. He gave them fits. That LaGuardia drove him out of town, just like later Giuliani did. And there's no more Mafia in New York ever again. the Columbian Order. It's Tammany Society, secret society, also known as Society of St. Tammany. No blue highlights, but there is a Tammany Society. We'll be looking at that. Sons of St. Tammany or the Columbian Order. Society of Tammany. They're going to not give that up. Comes from a Native American word, affable. DeWitt Clinton, he was in on that group, and he's also the one of Clinton's Folly, the first man to clean out one of the old world canals at Erie Canal. Ring any bells? My second video after discovering that one of the ancient capitals was Oklahoma City. First video, and 8 minutes after that, Erie Canal posted. This is all a grand computer-written deal. Satan turned it over to some sort of computer. They came up with this story after World War II, and they're sticking to it. Everything is a lie. Oh, or you're telling me if everything's not a lie, what's the true parts? You know, I'm going to need to know, you know, from people like Matt and Jazza Buster and other people that'll watch later, what's the truth as we know it so far going forward? Would you agree? Mudflood was Armageddon. We should go with that. The Bible is true. We should go with that. Not everyone who names the name of Jesus is saved, whether they're a wolf in sheep clothing or just someone who is being millstoned. We also know that it's the Lord who opens our eyes. People have watered us, planted us, and God has given the increase. We are where we are in this post-dystopic world with the Wall Street melting down around us. Doesn't look like it's going to get better. And you have two choices: hope I'm wrong, or hope for the rapture. It is so bad. I've known people since the 80s. Well, so it couldn't have been, it would have been 1991, who voted for Bill Clinton because I just want to get it over with. Things are so bad now. How could it get any worse? How could they lie to us anymore? The rapture has to be coming. Yeah, I voted for Bill Clinton. Why not just speed it up? You know it's going down, so just speed it up. I want it over with. I want to get out of here. But they don't want to lose their 401k. They never do. And that's the hard part. The whole, we'll see where the Lord leads it for that. Let me read this one. They are wolves right when they hear Jesus and are told about Jesus over and over, while they turn the other way and teach everything without Jesus. That's a good share of them. A different Jesus, another gospel, different things like that. What can we say? We were warned what to look out for. If we can't say, like, it's those guys, because they say, oh, you shouldn't judge. Okay. And really, that if somebody knocks on my door and goes, hey, you're a Christian? Yeah. Come on, you're going with me that extra mile, because I know that you're not a Christian unless I asked you for one. You're going to feel compelled to go too, so let's go. And if along the way I slap you, you're going to let me slap you in the other cheek, because that's what you have to do, be a consistent Christian. It can't be any other way. I'm not touching your face. I'm not touching your face. We don't have to play those games. There's context for everything. The Bible doesn't contradict itself when, sufficient the day is the trouble thereof. Take no thought for tomorrow. But it does tell you, You should be prepared if you're going to build a barn. If you're going on a journey, you're doing this or that. That's not a contradiction, it's context. There's earthly things, spiritual things, until we're encompassed about. We have time to educate people before what I see this next recession, a meltdown that's starting. Unless you don't think losing 45% of the stock market and some of the big gains in like, not the stock market, the NASDAQ, if you don't think losing 45% is a big deal in just 2 months, it's going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. If not this month, next month, but they are squeezing blood from you turnips. Us turnips. I'm not trying to personalize it. I'm trying to say you are part of the whole. We have to realize that. We have to teach that. Somehow we have to be, somewhat, it would be a lot better, wouldn't it, if this video was just starting and all of a sudden there was a 2-minute intro, better than anything that Crow could do, or some of those other ones, and I'd be on there showing me on this mountain, showing me on that mountain, showing me autopsying a trilobite and proving it's a midbrain, being the first person to autopsy a heart, being the first person to say, this heart is a body part, and when I cut it open, this side will be swastika, this side will be swastika, putting them in and finding body parts. Nothing else matters except that happened. But if the world's not ready for it and they're ready for something else, maybe they're ready for you. Maybe they're ready for somebody to say, in the meantime, while that was going on, and now I know that we do this because we've got the Bible or we got nothing. And right now, if it's not mud flood is Armageddon and flat earth nation, it's us against the world. To me, it seems like Jesus Christ's truth, completely provable from Scripture, undeniable to the point of not one person who even considers himself a Bible studier will come out and say, no, I don't think there's that mud flood was Armageddon or the earth was flat. I've been calling for a debate for a long time, and the more I go like this, look for a debate, I see the small views I have go down to 5 now. Because it's the same old story. When we make it till 11 o'clock and we get Dr. Mike Wilkerson's side of the story, oh my goodness, do you think there's going to be 5 people there? Whose information was it? Who did he talk to on the phone? And now God is left out. It could be aliens. So, 18,000 subscribers. He's going to have a couple hundred people probably watching. Maybe 1,000 by tonight. Not talking about God. I was in his chat room. He's promoting his book, so he might mention me today. You got Tammany Hall. Mafia's in charge. Been in charge. Conquest of Sicily. In their zeal to promote, nothing to see here about this. The martyrs of Otranto, 800 male inhabitants of southern Italian city of Otranto were beheaded. They say it was by the Ottomans. Proof is coming out. It was a kidnapping plot and stuff. And they end up kind of like, on the hill of Minerva, they found the bodies. Here's the skulls in their Catholic church. They don't deny that. But, when they get down to the end of their Star Fort thing and you want to, it's kind of like, well, the diplomatic letters that Palma decoded describe bank transfers and payment negotiations for freeing various captives in the months following the siege. The men who were killed were likely to have been ones whose families were too poor to secure their release, in which case the massacre was not an act of religious martyrdom and should not have been hailed as such by the church. Whatever, it's like Italians don't want to, it's messed up. And now there's a jazz festival there. You can go see, people like this kind of stuff. Skulls. Yeah, these are the martyrs of the people who couldn't afford to get ransomed out. I guess they didn't chip in and sell one of these things or those things and say, yeah, we'll help you out there. Another one of those from the same pro-Italy sites. Here's a Doge of Venice. I'm sure he was a good guy. But they believe that, it looks like El Cid, same statues everywhere. These are all, I believe, made up stories. Just can't believe it just happened. That's what's killing me. I can't believe that there are, what I think are Masonic women's orders out there claiming to be Christians and working at abortion clinics and expecting people to believe that they're saved. And that this isn't some wicked, evil plan where this poor woman has been millstoned or she's so deeply into it. This is from March 15, 2022, Tuscaloosa. Lunch hour at the abortion clinic. Pulls her Bible out of a bag and begins to read. Trust in the Lord, lean not on your own understanding, her favorite proverb says. And she returns to it again and again, and he will make your path straight. She's there trusting God, supporting the people who've just had abortions, because I trust in God. Oh, they just don't understand. There's the clinic staff of 11, most of them Black, deeply faithful Christian women, have no trouble at all working at a place where they kill children with their so-called job and their supposed worship of Jesus Christ. Oh, this person there's like, oh no, I met her, and now that she's for abortion, I believe that religion could be true. It just caused a whiplash for me. Just can't believe it. Oh yeah. We need to have a real conversation about what we describe as Christianity, said Kendra Cotton, a member of the Black Southern Women's Collective, a network of Black women organizers, many of them from faith-based group. The white evangelical worldview, because most, the liberal white Christians who claim they love Jesus, they've been on this bandwagon for a long time. And to get other people to help perpetrate the eugenics upon the Black race, they always are going to need, somebody like that they can prop up. I'm thinking of people like, Booker T. Washington. Let's build a trade thing because you're not going to be a doctor. Let's teach you how to be a good carpenter, and I'll teach you how to go to school. And I might have invented the peanut, or I could be confusing you with another famous person they set up. Before Roe versus Wade, faith leaders in many places led efforts to help pregnant women access underground abortions. No footnote? I guess the AP doesn't need a footnote for that lie. Because I'm going to tell you right now, no person of true faith ever help pregnant women to access underground abortions? That'd be like saying, like I've heard some people go, oh no, Saul was a real Christian, Jonathan's father, and the fact that this and that, he was always saved. The fact that he called up Samuel and went and visited a thing. But the same people, they'll go like, oh yeah, but Solomon's not. Well, Solomon's probably, we don't know. Let's don't judge those things, but let's realize the Bible calls them big time sinners. Not cool. That's not how you do it. You don't find loopholes and marry a bunch of women. You don't get rich off of shady teaching, for lack of a better word, especially when it comes to human infant life, when the one thing we're not supposed to do is millstone. The idea of the state restricting what a person can do with their own body is in direct conflict with that, the Bible, she says, and it is reminiscent of being under someone else's control, of slavery. You don't get to tell me what to do. What if she wanted to go shoot heroin on the street corner? What if she wanted to continue working at a hospital and not wearing a mask? That isn't the days of my body, my choice over for their argument like that. Is it's never worked. They don't have an argument. They're grasping at straws, and it's working. And it's working. Oh, did you like that? There's a series on YouTube. Now, of course, I want everybody to remember, thank you, yours, to remember as he refreshes my memory. When I was chatting with Stellium, there were people asking me questions. One, was like, oh, recommend a book for me, or like kind of put me on the spot. So I recommended How Should We Then Live by Dr. Francis Schaeffer. And it looks like yours checked it out, and there's videos of it on YouTube. And now, when you watch those things, I just wanted you to, of course, this was the mentor, the guy, that I went to Labrie and studied him for 30 years. I do feel like that as of this point, the Lord has lifted enough veil to where I'm sure that if Francis Schaeffer was still alive, we could have a conversation about mud flood was Armageddon. That's all I know. And when you look at it, realize I was still a Trinity believer then. I was still a globe lover. When I started, 95, I went geocentric. But yeah, Dr. Francis Schaeffer. "25 minutes till Stellium's thing premieres. We might be watching that."
So,
I got a problem with Dr. Veith.
Were kept, copied, and recopied. However, the original pristine Christianity of the New Testament gradually became distorted. The first century church, of course, was a very simple church. They met in homes and usually not in large numbers.
See, they're meeting in a star fort.
As they met together in these small groups, it centered around the Middle Ages. The early Christian church had turned away from the old Roman music because of its associations with the Roman social practices and the pagan religious rites. There were strong human elements in some of the music of the early church. We can think, for example, of Ambrose, Bishop of Milan in the 4th century, who wrote hymns and taught his people to sing them. This was an innovation in his day. Later, under Pope Gregory, there was a change to what we today call. This came to its climax in the 9th to the 11th centuries. I would like to go back for a few moments to the early days of the Middle Ages. The early Christian church had turned away from the old Roman music because of its associations with the Roman social practices and the pagan religious rites.
Did I just pick the same one?
In some of the music of the early church. Happened previously as an explanation. If this were not possible, nothing could be explained, and science could not be applied with reliability.
So you can see we were all brainwashed, but this was the best we had to have, and his explanations were the best that we had.
I have a reference point by what it teaches, and in this way, I have something to judge things by. But on the other hand, if I am left without any fixed point by which to judge things, without any cubbyholes, as it were, to fit the thoughts that are being thrown at me, I have no basis of judgment at all. I'm just left naked before these things that are thrown at me with no possible way of making a critical analysis. Many couples today cannot have children because of a low sperm count on the part of the husband.
So don't tell me I haven't been worried about this since I started studying him at age 21.
This can often be cured by artificial insemination using the husband's sperm. This is called AIH, H standing for the husband. This is surely a help to many couples. There then comes AID, sperm by a donor, another man. Where is the boundary line? Where does adultery begin? At present in Britain, such a child would be considered illegitimate. In the book, Our Future Inheritance, Choice or Chance, it is written, perhaps the most sensible suggestion made is that the concept of legitimacy be removed altogether. This does not only change the morals, but a weakening of the family. They make this change upon the basis of what they call social hindrance. It is what I call sociological law. We would all be glad to see the genetic diseases cured. But once the borderlines are removed, which are based upon the biblical absolutes, then humanness can be and is lost increasingly. And increasingly, full genetic engineering is accepted, and so is control. It is B.F. Skinner's thesis that all that people are is the result of conditioning by society.
Did you know that B.F. Skinner, through logic and deduction, proves there is no such thing as free will?
That through positive reinforcers, society should make people into what it wants them to be. George T. Harris in Psychology Today says, nobody would panic at Skinner's attack upon our idea of freedom if he were only talking. But he has a program and followers to push it. Such behaviors are often found where it counts. At times, they control education in the schools, down to the lowest grades. With all forms of determinism, man as man dies. The determinist has no way to derive his values from what exists, and hence his values and his morals must be chosen arbitrarily. Once this way of thinking is accepted, it is much easier to impose arbitrary absolutes. To quote B.F. Skinner, the man as man, we readily say, good riddance. I think we'd have to say, and it's not tried at all, though it's often been said, that science has become our new religion. We have been conditioned to accept the objectivity of the scientists without realizing that often their views are very clearly shaped by their philosophy or by their worldview. And therefore, having accepted this objectivity almost blindly and having it driven into us, whether it would be the more exact sciences, for instance, astronomy or chemistry or physics, or what now is accepted as almost exact sciences of sociology and psychology, having been conditioned to accept these things, people just stop listening. They just take what they're told without any critical analysis. It is well known that in Russia, political prisoners are put into mental institutions to be reconditioned, and thus they lose their civil rights and they become non-persons.
At that time, we didn't know that there were 40,000 people that got lobotomies in one hospital alone in between the wars and shortly thereafter because they're crazy.
Conditioning does not have to be so crude in order to be effective. In the West, the flood of books and articles and ideas about psychological, sociological, and chemical determinism has opened the way for the acceptance of first the idea and then the practice of manipulation. People have been increasingly conditioned to be treated as machines and to treat other people as machines. And the technical breakthroughs have largely been made for manipulation. No less a person than Arthur Kessler, the noted scientist and author, has suggested that a chemical agent be developed to rid men of aggression and give him tranquility. In other words, a super tranquilizer. Just like those who wanted to put LSD into the water supply, he suggested that some community may put it in its drinking water so that everyone could get the effects of it. In this section, I'm giving
well, obviously they went with fluoride instead,
which has been reported in various newspapers and news magazines. Kenneth B. Clark, one-time president of the American Psychological Association, suggested in 1971 that all political leaders should have to take anti-aggression pills so they could not be aggressive. And the head of the gynecology and obstetrics department of the Kansas City University Medical School, Dr. Kermit Cranty, urged that birth control pills be put into the world's drinking supplies to control population. And some have suggested that the state could dispense yet another drug to certain households to neutralize the pill. This way the state could decide who could have babies and who could not. Russell V. Lee, clinical professor emeritus of Stanford University Medical School, said that all public officials should have to have psychological annual testing in depth. And in the case of a high federal official, if the committee thinks it's necessary, the findings could be turned over to a congressional committee, would have the power to remove the official from office. One little thing, the men who dispense the pills and who do the psychological testing will be king. Who will control the controllers? And what will happen now that the line between what man should do and what he can do is obliterated? And if man is only a conditioned machine, what is the value of the continuation of mankind? The thing that made the difference, also a basis in its absolute teaching for both morals and law. Considered its basic geometric forms. In this, he was searching for a universal which would tie all kinds of individual things in nature together. But this gave a broken, fragmented appearance to his pictures. In his bathers, there is much freshness, much vitality, an absolute wonder in the balance of the picture as a whole. But he portrayed not only nature, but man himself in fragmented form. I want to stress that I'm not minimizing these men as men. To read Van Gogh's letters is to weep for the pain of the sensitive man. Nor do I minimize their talent as painters. Their work often has great beauty indeed. But their art did become the vehicle of modern man's view of fractured truth and life. As philosophy had moved from unity to fragmentation, so did painting. In 1912, Kandinsky wrote an article saying that insofar as the old harmony, that is, a unity of knowledge, have been lost, that only two possibilities remain: extreme abstraction or extreme naturalism. Both, he said, were equal. With his painting, modern art was born. Picasso painted it in 1907 and called it Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It unites Cézanne's fragmentation with Gauguin's concept of the noble savage, using the form of the African mask, which was popular with the Parisian art circle of that time. In great art, technique is united with worldview. And the technique of fragmentation fits well with the worldview of modern man. A view of a fragmented world and fragmented man, and a complete break with the art of the Renaissance, which was founded on man's humanist hope. Here, man is made to be less than man. Humanity is lost. Speaking of a part of Picasso's private collection of his own works, David Douglas Duncan says, "Of course, not one of these pictures was actually a portrait, but his prophecy of a ruined world. But Picasso himself could not live with this loss of the human. When he was in love with Olga and later Jacqueline, he did not consistently paint them in a fragmented way. At crucial points of their relationship, he painted them as they really were, with all his genius, with all their humanity. When he was painting his own young children, he did not use fragmented techniques and presentation. I want you to understand that I am not saying that gentleness and humanness are never present in modern art. But as the techniques of modern art advanced, humanity was increasingly fragmented." The opposite of fragmentation would be unity. And the old philosophic thinkers thought they could bring forth this unity from a humanist base. And then they gave this up. And the modern thinking has accepted fragmentation as a defeat, really.
So, is it any wonder, I thought it was a big know-it-all? I know. Hey, Matt G., wait until you see he breaks down the painting, Nudes Descending the Staircase, and convinces people, although, is it really even nudity, except the title suggested it? And he concludes that he thinks that, yeah, a non-Christian people watching that would probably have sex that night and not care. It's provocative.
A defeat that human mentality beginning from itself can bring forth a unity of thought and of life. Now, by unity, what we mean is that which would include all thought and all of life, and it can be achieved if indeed God has spoken and has not been silent, and in giving us the facts that man couldn't find for himself. There is a unity inside of which all that marvelous diversity, which then man can study, has a unified place, whether it's in knowledge or in values and in life. It was Dadaism which carried the concept of everything being matter of chance to its logical conclusion of the ultimate absurdity of everything, including humanity. This is Marcel Duchamp's Nude Descending a Staircase. Duchamp perhaps understood most clearly and consciously the absurdity of all things, including man, on the basis of modern man's worldview. Here he carried fragmentation further. The human being disappeared completely. He realized that this absurdity of all things included the absurdity of art itself. This is one of his ready-mades. He took any object near at hand and simply signed it. The philosophers, from Rousseau, Kant, Hegel, and Kierkegaard onward, had given up a hope of a unity of life and of knowledge, and had come to a fragmented concept of reality. Then the painters painted that way. However, the artists, being sensitive men, came more quickly to the understanding of what the end of this view would be, and that is that all things are absurd.
Is anything random about Jackson Pollock when he suspends his paint cans from a string and uses geometrical natural patterns? He's a hack.
The American Jackson Pollock is perhaps the clearest example of deliberately painting in a way that says all is chance. This is how Pollock went about creating some of his art. Thus, his paintings were a product of chance. But wait, is there not order in these lines of paint? Yes, because you see, it is not really chance that shaped his canvases. The universe is not a random universe. It has order. The movement of this swinging can of paint follows the order of the universe itself. The universe is not what these painters said it is. It was a bankrupt humanistic philosophy which first taught that reason leads to pessimism, and that optimism is only to be found in the area of non-reason. This basic idea filtered down to art, and then to classical music, and later to popular music. It started with Beethoven's Lost Quartets. You could not call these modern, but there was a shift from the previous music. In France, Claude Debussy opened the door for modern music.
Now we know Satan used these people to program us to their history to lead us down a primrose path. Keep it in mind where we're at and where I was, you were, I don't know. Too much culture.
This is Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. You're listening to the published score of electronic music. Concern with the element of chance was part of Stockhausen's work. This ties him in with John Cage.
What?
Cage believed the universe is a universe of chance. To express this, he produced music by chance. Cage's music turned out to be sheer noise. It had to become increasingly spectacular, or rather a bare philosophic intellectual statement, separated from the fullness of who man is and what the universe is, tending to be only a bare intellectual statement rather than a work of art. It often has become anti-art art. After philosophy, art, and music, poetry, the novel, and drama became the vehicle for these ideas. In the English-speaking world, T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland came first.
Le Prince d'Aquatena la Tour Abolique. These fragments I have shored against my ruin. Why then I'll fit you. Geronimo's mad again. Data, Dayadvam, Damyata. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
You see, he matches a fragmented message with a fragmented form of poetry. Just as Picasso opened the way for a fragmented concept of life in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, so fragmented poetry in the English-speaking world began with T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. Later, Eliot became a Christian, and his form of writing changed from that of the Wasteland. More and more, philosophy was expressed, not as formal statements of philosophy as such, but rather in the novel and other art forms. Sartre wrote Nausea, Camus, The Stranger.
Remember, these were written when I was a young man. These people, this is all, everything just happened. We're living it. Your orphan train, foundling, or your grandparents were at least. No wonder your head is spinning like you just hit the jackpot at Monte Carlo. It is confusing.
And the play, and Simone de Beauvoir, L'Invité. In the 60s, many of the basic philosophic statements were made through the cinema. And being carried by the cinema, they reached a far wider circle of people than has ever been the case through painting or literature, let alone through the writings of the philosophers. Among these films were Silence and the Hour of the Wolf by Bergman, Juliet of the Spirits by Fellini, Blow Up by Antonioni, Belle de Jour by Buñuel. They showed pictorially and with great force what it is like if people are only machines, and also what it is like if people try to live in the area of non-reason. In the area of non-reason, there is no way to distinguish between right and wrong, or even between what is objectively true and that which is illusion or fantasy. A good example is Antonioni's Blow Up. The advertisement for the film reads, "Murder without guilt, love without meaning." In this film, there are no certain moral values and no human categories either. Blow Up has no hero. All one has is Antonioni's non-hero. All there is the camera, which just goes click, 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 and the human factor has disappeared. Some of the films of that period went even further.
You'll never make it, Francois! Neither will you! Unless my calculations are incorrect, the data processor... What's it? It was too loud. We'll go again right away. I've blown up buildings, hunted sharks, crashed airplanes, and flown up. Anyway, American Express commercial. Here we go. Can I get my snack? You're eating it. Making movies. How do you do it? What's it like? Let me just tell these guys one thing. It sounds fake. Why would I put on a hat?
Right here.
You don't have it? What happened? 2. How do you tell it?
Sandy wants you to pick another gun.
Can you do a 357 with a bayonet?
Yeah, let's see why not.
I got 3 dialogues. All right, let's hear it.
I'm going with you.
Don't start. What do you think?
I like it. Here she is. This is Lucy. Where were you? We were looking all over the place.
She's a big fan of yours.
Is that true? Next, there's your collaborators. Everybody's got some kind of... I'll do it. I got it. Save the receipt. I'm going to sit there. What are you doing there? Then you mix it all together, and that's more or less it. My life is about telling stories. Is mine birds? I think so. Me and birds. Like...
We're going to fit in the beast system, people.
A sudden burst of speed. The pump automatically works harder. But we've got to keep moving on to the carburetor. We just came through the needle valve that lets the gasoline into the carburetor. That is the float on top of the gasoline. It controls the needle valve, keeping just the right amount of gas here in the bowl of the carburetor. Hey, there goes our drop again. He's going down through the metering jet at the bottom. But he's still in the carburetor. How's that for wind? It roars through the carburetor, sometimes at a speed as high as 800 miles an hour to vaporize the gasoline. That funnel above and the other one below are called Venturi tubes. They control the speed and direction of this hurricane of air. 3 tubes in this carburetor keep raw gasoline from getting into the engine. And importantly, why the 6 cylinders of this engine run on a very small amount of gasoline. But look, there's our drop over there again. Say, it's getting bigger. to the manifold that distributes the gasoline to the cylinder. Ouch! We're standing on the hot spot. All the drops mixed with enough air are floating right on past. The others stop here to be vaporized. This manifold here cuts down waste and lets each drop of gasoline do its best. Here we go down the manifold. Gasoline is whirled through the manifold to keep the mixture uniform. Speed it up in one place and slow it down in another. So the same amount of gas gets into each one of the cylinders. These are the valves that control the gas going into the cylinder. These big intake valves certainly make it easy for gas to get into the cylinder. No crowding, no pushing, no waste. Important.
That there were once creatures both small and gigantic that were living on the earth that were destroyed in different cataclysms, and that a lot of the rocks that we're taught are formed through compression of sea life and land life that's pressed down for millions and millions of years under the seafloor. That's not necessarily accurate. That many of the rocks that we're actually seeing are literally hardened remains of different creatures. The tissues are all around us, but our eyes are not trained to see them.
From the Business Game Changers, I'm Sarah Westall. I have Mike Wilkerson coming to the show, and he is working on this field called biogeology. That's the term he came up with. And this has to be one of the more fascinating things I have seen in a while. And he has so much evidence for it. I don't know what to even think about it at this point, but because it's out there. But it's hard not to be absolutely fascinated and want to know more, because everything he's showing me and showing us in this interview tells me that maybe he's onto something. And I saw some of his clips. He was on the SGT report, and then I started watching some of his stuff, and I thought, this is absolutely fascinating. I want to learn more. And he's seeing these rocks that look like hearts and mountains that look like elephants, and he's showing us how it's anatomically correct in all these ways, 50 different ways that it matches up to biology. And why, and he's coming in, and when he gets pushback, and I'm telling him this, I want you to get even more pushback, and so that you can try to answer all these questions. You can't, it's very difficult to be proven wrong unless people really challenge you, but so far, no one's been able to challenge him in ways that he hasn't been able to come up with an answer, and so people are more and more intrigued. He's getting huge followings because of that, and it's just absolutely fascinating. If you're listening to this on podcast, then I recommend you come to my website and look at this in video if you have time, so you can see some of these images. It's just absolutely fascinating. Otherwise, I think you should be able to follow along mostly in podcasts and audio. So if you want to look at the video, or if you want to look at the video and see the pictures, go to sarahwestall.com and you'll see it on my website. You can search by his name, or it'll be on the front page for a while. I also wanted to tell you that for my Patreons, we know that the C60 is the best way to deal with your immunities from an overall perspective, and my Patrons get 10% off on that. There are coupons for C60 for regular listeners as well on my shop. Just, it's so important for us to really be focusing on our immunities right now. So let's get into this really great show with Mike Wilkerson. Mike, thank you so much for joining the program.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You have the most crazy and interesting thing I've seen in a while. And with all the hard shows I do, I thought, gosh, I want to do this because I love getting on the box. I like looking at things that are completely different. And we've been kind of bogged down with really serious issues. And I not that this isn't, it's not as serious, it's very interesting. It's about history. It's about, you call it biogeology. Can you explain how you got into this, where you learned that this was even a thing?
Yeah, it started a couple of years ago. I was watching all sorts of different videos on different unusual topics, and one of the topics that I came across was something called the mud fossils, and that's basically the idea that certain aspects of what we've been taught about geology, some pretty major ones, are not actually accurate, and that the amount of time that it takes for something to fossilize, for example, is we're told that it happens in the space of millions of years of time, when in reality, under certain conditions, it can happen very, very rapidly. Mm-hmm. And so that's one aspect of it, and then the other aspect of it is that there were once creatures both small and gigantic that
and again, she just asked, where did you learn this at? And he didn't say, Mike, you didn't say, I picked Alan's brain in 2019 for almost an hour. And that's not full disclosure. When to the direct question asked, Roger Spur never contacted you, never left you any messages. Andreas Xerxes, who interviewed me about mud flood, gave you my number and you called me, man.
Living on the earth that were destroyed in different cataclysms, and that a lot of the rocks that we're taught are formed through compression of sea life and land life that's pressed down for millions and millions of years under the seafloor. That's not necessarily accurate. That many of the rocks that we're actually seeing are literally hardened remains of different creatures. The tissues are all around us, but our eyes are not trained to see them.
Well, and how many of these rocks would you say? I mean, you say they're everywhere. Are half the rocks we're looking at is really huge or biological?
It really depends on where you are. I happen to live in a place in Spain where there's a lot of traces of cataclysm, mud flood, and volcanic. And the research that I started on initially had to do with the idea of titans, it sounds utterly crazy. It's talking like beyond giants. We're talking about creatures that are the size of mountains. And it was a variety of different topics that got me considering the possibility that a mountain here in the area that I live in Spain could actually have been one of these ancient creatures. I started with the idea of mud floods. Mud floods are something that a lot of people, a lot of independent researchers are looking at that are the undeniable traces and remnants of worldwide cataclysms that literally wiped out life as we know it, possibly multiple times. And the traces of that are found in cities all around the world. There's another topic that a lot of people are diving into about Tartaria, which is an ancient empire that we learn nothing about in schools that happens to be the largest empire that ever existed. So there are all these different topics that I was looking into at the same time. And then I saw a video on the subject of Titans, and I never thought anything of it because it seems like a silly topic. But when I was watching this one video in particular, showed some pictures of an island in Maui, another place in Iceland, and these are places that look very much like elephants. And the mountain that
Do you have
is
those pictures?
behind the town, yeah, I do.
That way, when you're
So-
talking about them, we can look at them.
Okay, so this is one of the images that really got me thinking, because this particular rock looks a heck of a lot like an elephant turning to the side. And a lot of people might be thinking this is totally crazy. This is what's known as pareidolia, where you're looking up at a cloud, or you're looking at anything and you see a particular pattern, and you assume that what you're seeing is actually real. So this is the mountain in Javia, Spain, which is where I live, and it's known affectionately as the elephant by locals for obvious reasons. When you get from afar, it looks a lot like an elephant that's lying on its stomach. And I've always been fond of it, but it never occurred to me that it might actually a titan, which sounds totally absurd. But I work as a chiropractor, and I've studied a lot of anatomy, and I had been up to this eye on numerous occasions. And so after seeing these videos, I started to wonder, is there any truth at all to this? And I'd already been watching these videos on mud fossils and observing the rocks around me and pondering how could these rocks have possibly formed the way they did, because they did look very biological in nature. So I started to get online and on Google Earth and start to tour around the island. I can do that, or around the mountain. So this is the mountain, and you can see here. So since I did the videos, I've done a 5-part series called Unveiling a Titan. You can see this is the thumbnail for the first of the videos. The test had to be photoshopped, obviously.
Yeah.
But since I did that, the mountain has actually been edited on Google Earth. This is how it used to look, and you can see the eye clearly, and I could soar all around. But now on Google Earth, the sections of the mountain that I reported on in the second and the third video have been edited out, which is a fascinating thing. But if you get in really close, they open up. But now you can't get further away and see the bigger picture. But initially, what I was doing is I was looking around, because pareidolia is where you see a mountain and it looks like a face, and the shadows are hitting it just right. And so, to make the assumption that that's a real creature would be, a delusion.
Yeah. Well, do you have a picture of it before Google wiped it off?
Let's see here. That's the back side. You mean a picture of the Google Earth section?
Yeah, do you have it before Google took it off?
That's taken with Google Earth there. And you the eye is here, and this section is actually in here. So let's see. So
it's hard for me to see that. I look at it and go, I don't know if I see it. But you really analyze it. You can see it better, I suppose.
Yeah. So basically, if you look at it from this angle, there are cutouts here on both sides where the head becomes the shoulder. And there's also, if you, from further down, there's a plateau right here where the trunk would be. So you've got the head shape, you've got the back, and then you have the eye right where the eye should be. So as I started to fly around this mountain, as I'm doing now with you, and before there was a lot more detail, I remembered that I'd been up this canyon, which is exactly right where the legs would be, and there's the remnants of a rib cage. You can see the lines coming down. Some of the people are thinking, this guy's out of his mind, crazy. But as I started to look at this more, I had been at the eye on numerous occasions, and it's a very unusual cave. And there are all kinds of channels going back in different ways. And there's this little section here. And so rather than just give in to pareidolia and assume that, oh, this is an elephant, I decided to go back to the anatomy books, and I started looking at elephant.
Yeah, I wonder where he heard. People, you got to get your anatomy books back out. You know where he heard it. So, Matt, I'm typing you a message to answer your question right now.
Anatomy and comparing the things that are in the fossil record. This is the remains of an elephant. This is turned to limestone. The mountain itself is made out of limestone, which we're told from mainstream geology is composed mainly of skeletal fragments, marine organisms, corals, forms, and mollusks. So what we know of limestone is that it's actually made of bone. So that's kind of how I started to get on the topic. And as I went into it more and was studying the anatomy, I decided that the only way to proceed would be to have a laundry list of different kinds of things that I'd be expecting to find as I went back to the eye. So I got online and I was studying the anatomy in 3D, and there are all kinds of different bone structures that when you look at the eye socket of a vertebrate, not just an elephant, but any of the vertebrates, then
and when I just typed that word, I see I expected much more from the Hacker King, and that he wouldn't, because I love to give credit to Jesus and the fact that he revealed it, and that the stones are crying out, not just like, cool, man, I was the first hacker and now I got this.
Have are places where the bones meet, and they're called sutures. And so, for example, if you look here, I can show you on an elephant. I'm not trying to be disingenuous by showing you as a human, but for example, this is a fissure for the optic nerve. There's a section here where it goes down into what would be the nasal cavities. The eye is here, and so I started to look at these different. You can see the mouse when I'm moving it, right? These different lines. There in the cave, there are sloping channels that go down exactly here, and
it's exactly the shape of that. So it's just thing after thing after thing is consistent with what the remains with the.
Yeah. So I had a list before I went up to the eye of different anatomical features, and when I got there, I found 10 of the things that were on my list. I found the optic fissure. I found sutures, the overall shape, the position. This was a big one here. If you look at this, this is called the infraorbital foramen. All vertebrates have it. It's where there are nerves and blood vessels that come through here, and that is actually where did it go? If we look, there's so much material it's sometimes hard to keep it all straight, but that's what you're looking through right there. So this is what I'm talking about. This here is the eye socket.
In real life, this Titan's head is on his side. What he's seeing is that two eyes is a sinus and an eye of what I think would be the Titan's right eye. I wonder if or if Sarah Westall is a Christian.
Of an elephant, and see this line here? That's the suture between those two bones I was showing before, and this line here is in the exact same location. Even does a little jog right there, just like this one does. So it started to get pretty weird when I got up there because I was finding so many things. Here's the optic fissure.
Because he was finding everything that he knew he was going to find. I'm just looking at her channel. Give me a second. It doesn't look like she does YouTube. Bitcoin. Well, hats off to Mike for getting this interview.
An elephant skull, and that's in the exact same location in the cave.
It's not just this one cave though. You started finding these anomalies all over the place, right? Like there's I saw heart pictures of rocks that look like. Do you have any of those pictures?
That came later, because what happened was I started looking at all the rocks differently after this, because I went up to the eye, then I started to hypothesize that there might be an ear. And when I started looking into that, that's when it got really strange, because not only did I not know there was a cave there, but I went looking for the cave, just hypothesizing that it was there, and I found out that there is a cave there, and without having known anything about it, it turned out to be the most thoroughly excavated cave in all of Europe, which was very unexpected. They had a whole team of archaeologists that went up there. They did 3D mapping of the internal parts of the cave. They found the remains of humans. There were cave paintings, and then I started to.
So just to check, can everybody hear me when I talk? Right now, I'm just kind of letting this go, and listening. We did some Bible study earlier. We're going to see how we're going with the Spirit here, people. Evangelon is Armageddon, and Attack on Titan is post Thousand Year Reign. That'd be very interesting. The first Titans to me were somehow, and it has to do with Lot. We'll interrupt this now, just for a second. Oh, okay. Yeah, my ears. There you go. I want to talk to you too, man. Let's go to that book of Job. I was looking at it earlier. I'm going the wrong way. Verse 6, now there was a day when the sons of God, when the members of the heavenly court, when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Saturn also came along. Oh, Satan. Not Saturn, Satan, but heavenly court. Here's how can this be post Armageddon? The time when the Bene, the sons of Elohim, came to present themselves, and Ha-Satan was there. They came to present themselves before Jesus. And when Jesus was Jehovah, the incarnate God, ruling as a Titan, Jehovah ruling as someone Moses could relate to, but still as the creative Elohim. Because this council was the sons of God, the Ha-Elohim. That was the type of when Jehovah, Yahweh, walked with them as a Titan. Hey, in the cool of the evening, isn't this great? But this isn't the Word. This is the Word, 430. Who was it? It was the God who created. Because it's always Jesus. You know, I could pull up when Jesus creates, it's always in the flesh, and it's always as the Word. You know, when Jesus is the Word, what have we learned about sound and vibrations? And Jesus is the Word, and he was with God and was God, but who is? You know, this is physical, but who is God? Who is the thing getting physicalized? There was something to be made physical. At one time, we realized that it was the Spirit God, not the incarnate physical God. That's the Jesus, the one that if it makes a sound in a word, it's in the physical. That's either what you call Yahweh or Jehovah. So this had to be before it. This is the Spirit. I saw the Spirit of God. Matthew 3:16. It is not you who speak, but it is the spirit of your father, the devil. But he has another, there is a spirit. This word is used a lot. And in John 24, we realize that there is a God, the God is a spirit. Not physical flesh, like Jesus found himself in a body of flesh. Unusual circumstances compared to as theophanies as Yahweh or Jehovah or Melchizedek or the captain of the Lord of hosts. But whenever it's physical, it's Jesus, because God is a spirit. And it says, and those who worship must worship him in spirit and in truth. So we know that the original one God is a spirit. And at one time in Job, he had a council of other Elohims, but there's always only been one fiat creating God, Elyon. God is a spirit. His worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. Better said, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. Or better yet, God is a spirit and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. Is that a time where the Berean Study Bible matches the New International? Because that's what the truth is. And when we go to Genesis chapter 13, we see Melchizedek. 14. That's what I meant. We find out who the incarnation, it goes like, okay, well, who is he serving? He's a priest of God Most High. So we'll look at that word because sometimes people like it and this helps them understand who God is. He is the King, the God Most High. He's so ladies and gentlemen, and all of the other gods and this and that and the one good God, and something happened, sure enough, bad in Genesis 3 and Genesis 6 and Genesis 11. Genesis 8. A flood. And in Genesis 14, we're introduced to, forget all of the physical stuff. There is a Most High God. And Elyon. La'el. It's not the 430 God. It is the mightiest, the top, the number one. Can't be any stronger. And it's emphasized with the Le. You see, it's not just El like it is 163 times. It's Le'el. God has made everlasting God the this is a to toward. So there is no higher level of God when we're looking at Le'el, Elyon. Le'el, Elyon. The highest of the high, most high God is a spirit. And those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. He's given us of his spirit in Christ to those whom have and can testify by confessing with their mouth what they believe in their newly changed heart, that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh. He is Lord of all. In him, all things consist. And there can be that is one thing that the God El Elyon, who must insist to be worshipped in a certain way, also spells it out in both testaments about who he is. He is the image of the invisible God. They call it firstborn because it was his word that as you see, for by him all things were created, because that's the physical way things work in a spiritual word. You set up a physical thing to go, give me that sound, give me that resonance, give me those infinite amount of Enigma Mobius strips, and change the world, make a world, show those other titans how it's supposed to be done. For by Jesus all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him, because it's God's Spirit working through him. And who is it for? Who is going to have every knee bow before him? Jesus Christ. What will they say? Jesus Christ is Lord. Some to the glory of God, others not so good. We are commanded to preach the gospel, knowing that to most it is the stench of death. But there was a time before Armageddon where there were martyrs saying, how long? I was beheaded. And Jesus said, be patient, be patient. There are more martyrs to come who will give their life for the one who created all things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions. That's talking about the angels and the titans, authorities and rulers. All things were created through him and for him. Jesus is before all things. And by his word, that cymatic pattern or whatever he's doing to keep us all held together, we kind of equate it to battery operated vortexes in a torus of a swastika, infinite helix of Enigma Mobius strips. But nobody's coming up with a good what is that, an acronym for it, where you make up the initials? It's just, even that's too long. So it doesn't help when you try to explain how, you can't explain how great Jesus is. You can say that he is the head of the body of the church, because he is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. And really, all I'm asking is that when God brought this mud flood stone movement, look at the canals are cleaned out, the Native Americans weren't really, the blacks were here, nothing from the hacker prints. But it's still big news.
To analyze the anatomy of the inner ear and compare that with all of this amazing footage that they had gotten. And that really caused me to start looking at everything differently. So I did a video. One of the things that was frustrating to me about the whole concept of mud fossils is that there are tons and tons of videos out there of people holding up different rocks and making outlandish claims about what those rocks are. And sometimes they look like what the person is claiming. And
we've heard this before.
Like so I have to start questioning how many coincidences does it take before there starts to be a recognizable pattern. And that was what was happening with the mountain, and that caused me to look at all the stones differently. And then I figured, okay, well, this should be repeatable, because that's the whole idea behind the scientific method, is you have some kind of an idea, you're looking at the physical world around you, empirical evidence, and you're trying to make sense of patterns. And if there's a recognizable pattern, then you have to set up some kind of a test to see if it's repeatable. So I went out into the into the river bottoms, and I was filming, and in the space of about 15 minutes, I found a whole bunch of different rocks that had these same anatomical features. And you can see there's very specific places where there are openings, they have a particular shape, and this reoccurs across different sizes. So it was a fascinating thing to.
Isn't there some more thing too about the blood and the iron? I was saying,
right.
Go ahead.
Well, that I was finding with both the mountain and the rocks themselves, because if we go into, let's see here. So if we look at bone, for example, this is.
You guys want to see some blood that's caught in a gemstone? I'll go get it. I want to go get it. I'm going to go get it.
This is the inside of the femur. And you've got the hard bone on the outside, and then on the inside you have what's known as trabecular bone. In the head, it's called spongus bone. And this is where the blood is produced in the body. It's produced in our skull and in our long bones. And blood is rich in iron because it contains, it's got hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is rich in iron. So as I was walking around the plateau that was in front of Mont Go, I was finding all kinds of very unusual rocks that I was having a hard time explaining based on what I knew about geology. These channels are going through these rocks, and they're filled with this reddish earth, but not just the reddish earth, they're actually caked with iron ore. So this, I'm hypothesizing, is actually the blood of what would be trabecular bone. This is what trabecular bone looks like under a microscope. And it's fractal in nature, so it goes from bigger to smaller and smaller, and it looks like Swiss cheese. And if you look at bone, this is skull bone, and it looks like a sandwich. You have the top, and then you have this blood-rich area here, and then you have the bottom, and then the trabecular bone. This is how bone grows. It grows like trees. So I was finding a lot of different rocks that had these channels and had the iron ore stuck to them. And then I was seeing sections of the mountain where portions of the mountain were broken away, and then it was reddish underneath. And so I believe that's this outer section of the sandwich, so to speak, that's gone, and it's exposing the blood-rich section inside.
Does it have the porous like the bones do? Does it have the?
Yeah, and in fact, when you get up close to some of these rocks, they look like you can see micro blood vessels going through them. This is an example on the top of the mountain of this spongus bone. So if you think of that, this has all been worn away by wind and rain, but you can still see little traces of red here. But compare that to this or to this. It's exactly the same. So the elements have eroded this part because.
Can you zoom in to be able to see that with the spongy?
Sure.
No, not on this, but on the real, on the rocks.
So this is one where the earth has gone out of it. Let's see. Good samples. I wasn't planning on going into this much detail on this topic here. This is what I call cortical bone, and I've done 5 videos on this topic. They're called Unveiling Titan. First video is just an overview. Second video covers the eye. Third video goes in detail into the ear. The fourth video is looking at the histology, which is the technical term for the tissues. And I analyze all of the different rocks all over the mountain, and I show how that corresponds to what you would expect to find anatomically in that part of the mountain. And it lines up time after time after time. So this is what would be known as cortical bone. So if you think of the outer sandwich that I talked about, this doesn't have much in the way of what's known as vascularity, which are the blood vessels. So that's going to be more like solid rock, and then the occasional little channel going through it. And that is exactly what this is showing. You can see that there's
no. You see, let's go back 1 second here. Oh, where was that? That he was, because he was just showing what was petrified wood, is what they call petrified wood.
It's broken off here, and then it's revealed right inside this reddish earth, which is literally oozing out of this channel. So this is cortical bone, and then you have the smaller blood vessels, but it doesn't look like the trabecular bone that I showed in these other rocks. Here you can see, you want to get up close. This is a good example. If you get up, right up close to it, you can see that. But any of the other mountains in the region, the idea behind the mud fossils is that when they're buried in mud, there's no air there. And so what happens is the microbes in the lava.
Okay, it doesn't work. It only works with the glittering sword. Look, for all you people that still believe in petrified wood and that it wasn't the glittering sword, I don't know how you get there with things being dead, and that it's supposed to, even if it's slowly but quickly leach out and then leach back in, it's still coming back in a dead thing. To where with the Bible, and it gets hit by the glittering sword, it's the real deal thing. That's blood caught in a rock. From the backside, come on, baby, please. That's a blood stain caught by a Nephilim in distress. Does this one have any blood in it? No, but you can see this unusual shape. And they'll say this is slag melted glass, but really melted with bubbles in it. That's probably this was part of that other one. Look at when you see a crystal raw, without the point, being exposed, as the rest of the crystal. Look at the lines that are on raw crystal. Try to get that book behind it. There you can kind of, you get it. And it's crystal, you know, and it has the points. So the rocks are crying out. They've been crying out. It's a hallelujah time. The Lord will be praised. The thing is, it's just further off, and people will have to be much more desperate, much more convinced. And eventually they're going to, you know, ask someone like Mike, well, what does it all mean, man? And I hope they have a good enough answer that will answer somebody's eternal begging questions of, you know, how should I live if there is a God and Jesus's word is true, the Bible is true. And it's unfortunate that they don't want to go there. Now, was there a question that I was supposed to be coming from? Let's see. The common factor of John 17, 3, 6, 11, 12, and 26. The common factor is those people that are his sheep. Looking at the high priestly prayers is often hard for people, you know, but they do tie together. And this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work you gave me to do. And now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed. I have manifested your name to the people whom you gave me out of the world. Yours they were, and you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they know that everything you have given me is from you, and I have given them the words that you gave me, and they received them and have come to know in truth that I came from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I am praying for them. I am not praying for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours. All mine are yours, and all yours are mine, and I am glorified in them. I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you, El Patron. I am coming to you, Holy Father, separate, you know, my Father. It's just like somebody would say, my Father, the one who said, now go speak life. I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you, Holy Father. Potter, ancestor, you know, holy. One-time usage. It's sacred. It's holy by the Holy Spirit. It's separated him into the holy city. That city was separated. I need you to go, Jerusalem didn't start out as the city of David. I need you to go to that city. That's a separated city. The holy stand in a holy place. The saints, they were people who were separated. That's what these words mean. It doesn't mean, oh, they're going to be Titans too. Doesn't mean that at all. They were the ones separated for this part of calling. Anything holy and separated. And that's what Jesus was. He was the incarnate Melchizedek, to get the word across that there are many gods, but only one, El Elyon. And that's who he's talking to. That's how he's talking about it. That there seems to be pretty hard to get around it. Verse 12. Did I tell you that they're coming? Keep them in your name, which you have given to me, that they may be one, even as we are one. Well, right now, looking at a lot of Christians, we are only one in the Spirit, because each one of us considers we should be listened to, and God has given us a message, or we're comfortable with the Spirit that I need to hear a message from people like me and others and then apply them. But we are one in that way because we have the same Spirit given to us. The same God changed our hearts. Verse 12, while Jesus was with them, he kept them in the name of El Elyon, which you have given me, and I guarded them, and not one of them have been lost except Judas Iscariot. Again, the scripture must be fulfilled. But now he is returning, and this is a culmination. This is a culmination because Jesus will forever remain in the flesh. And all praise and glory that the Spirit says, because it was God himself who said, I will provide myself a sacrifice to Abraham, that did that. Which is why it can say in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, that he will be called Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father, the mighty God. Those are things to call him. But he will always be in the flesh. He'll have a throne. And it's somehow that deal where Jesus is always, and that, we've got to get this down, because right now, remember how the Lord is just showing us 2 nights ago how the cubed magnet sets off a bipolar projection, north and south projections on the dome. We got to get there. This stuff is old news, man. I'm not waiting on Mike to get on board with it, but I've got nothing else to do. I've got nothing else to build on. I'm trying to just keep presenting, saying, hey, are we going here? And the world's falling down around us. We're living more and more every day. It's obvious proofs we live in the post-Armageddon world, post-dystopic government running us. People have had to take the swear of oath that, no, the government never changed. We're run by the mobs, and in the meantime, we can't find enough to agree on to realize that, this is working good. I can still go out and grind rocks every day and go, hey, what about this? But very soon we'll be out of food, and people are going to be going like, I wonder what happened to that guy. Right. Good. That's how you bring it down your viewers, Alan. The common factor of 3 6, 11, 12, and 26. If you're looking for your name, is that what you're going for there, man? What do you think that means? Do you think that means that we should be calling him Yahudi or something like that? Because that's going to get you nowhere here. You think this means that, we got to decide between whether we should call him Emmanuel or Jehovah or Yahudi? Or we have to, he made his name known. What did he call it? What did he say it was? Your character, your name, your fame, your reputation. And that's what we talk about Jesus, right? Because we know he was called Emmanuel. We know he was called the Prince of Peace. We know in chapter 19 alone, he's given a bunch of different names and titles and a warning. Here comes Jesus in the battle of, Revelation, going to that marriage supper. Well, Jesus had some business to take care of. He's called the Lamb of God. The one on the right horse, called faithful and true. He's called the Word of God. He has on his robe, on his thigh, he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But he's not called by his real name, because verse 12 says that same God there on the white horse, his eyes like the flame of fire, and on his head many diadems, has a name written that no one knows but himself. So I hope we're not going towards anybody that would believe they know Jesus's name. I don't even know my own name, and I want to be a conqueror. I want to be an overcomer. I want to be someone like Revelation chapter 3, verse 11. Those people who were waiting for them, I want to be like them now. Picking up verse 11. Hold fast what you have, so that no one may seize your crown. The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it. And I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from heaven, and my own new name, so where were we going with that? Did we have do we have any follow up on those, Cove? Or did I just go out of my way to offend somebody? I hope not.
That would normally eat away at the flesh and cause it to decompose, they can't thrive in that environment. And so then what happens is a slow exchange.
No, there are no slow exchanges.
Referring to great detail can be preserved in these fossils. But
Well, it's just interesting.
I
Now,
just encourage people to look into it.
what do you think the star forts are for? I mean, when you hear star fort, you're thinking aliens or something. But really,
Some say they were for mining purposes. What we know about them is a lot of the old world cities. You know, when we look at Europe, thinking of Paris and Copenhagen and Stockholm and Amsterdam and Antwerp, and all these great cities all over Spain. These were all built on and around star forts. The star forts were actually there first, and this is provable because you can go back and you can look at the old maps of the cities that are, you know, from several hundred years ago in the old books and find them.
this picture, that picture you had up was built all around those star forts, or that is a star fort.
That is a star fort, and a lot of the star forts have been covered in mud. So that gets back to the mud flood topic. And mud flood is just a potential explanation for how these things could have petrified, getting back to that. And then we have all kinds of examples of buildings around the world that we're told were carved out of stone.
You know, I hope that Lynn is watching, because Lynn, do you think that's got to be a brain, you know, or a gut? It could be a gut. What do they call that? It's
examples of buildings around the world that we're told were carved out of stone, but when you look into them in more detail, it makes a lot more sense that this was actually volcanic ash, volcanic flow, and that buildings were melted, and then they've gone in. You can see here, this is in recent times, this is in ancient times. So there's a whole lot that we don't know about our history, and
That's for sure.
And when it comes to geology, I'd say more than ever that's the case.
Okay, well, I think this is really interesting. Where can people find more about your work? I would like, well, first of all, tell them where they can find more about your work.
The channel name is Stellium7, and I'll just. Yeah, sometimes people put a space between the stellium and the 7, and then they find a whole bunch of info on astrology. So that is the channel name, and
Excellent. Okay, so you have a science background. You're a chiropractor. You have a lot of biology, so you're able to then compare it to all this stuff. I like the idea of you getting
start to recognize these patterns. Is that I started with a degree. I grew up in California, and I went to the University of Santa Barbara, and I had a degree in the humanities. And so that combined with the science, I don't know, maybe it makes me more apt to pattern recognition. But
that's absolutely excellent.
Either that or I'm wrong about everything. I could be wrong about everything.
Well, no, but
no, you know I'm not wrong about everything. So you got a good way to keep making a living, getting famous.
You can't learn and you can't figure out new things without taking different perspectives. And that's all of what I'm trying to do with my show. Is that's why I bring on people like you who just see things from a completely different perspective, because you're not gonna get there. And sometimes people are wrong, but it's okay to be wrong as long as you're flushing something out that seems like it might make sense, right? I don't think you're wrong. I'm just saying that's how we grow as a human species, is that we ask questions and we look at things from different paradigms.
Sometimes to answer your question honestly, Matt, if you're still there, and it looks like you are, sometimes I wish I didn't let Doug talk me out of just going ahead and crashing the gold system back then. just showing the body parts of how to find gold, because nothing, it seems like we talked about it then, nothing ever is going to popularize this until they realize what we used to talk about all the time, which is true, that if these are body parts, the reason I went to the Bible first with Doug's advice was to get that settled, was because right off the get-go, we were mining for gold and finding it. You follow it to the ganglion nerves. You know from the Bible when it talks about the example of how, you know, there's 24 nerves that surround your pineal gland that are gold tipped. And those are the prayers of you and the organisms and MDA that live in you that go up to God. It's pictured in heaven in real life because it was shown to Moses and everybody as a picture of what exists in heaven. And so in our body, the Kabbalah is right in few aspects. Damned to hell by missing the point that it all happened on earth too, with Jesus really coming to wash us away, to show us that our river of life is fed through amphiphugal lymphocanosis, which is the condensation of the brain as it reaches the hot points of your neck and then drips back through the black goo, activating your spine and your nerves so that you don't have to think if you're going to, oh, it's dusty. Wow, I blinked right in time. You didn't have to think about it. God takes care of us. And those nerves and those things are how we find gold. I sometimes wish, Matt, like it would have evolved all of this of who ended up with the credit, but it was all like, you'll crash the system. And he wanted Trump to take the blame for crashing the gold, not me. But in the long run, what difference does it make? The system's going down now, and not as many people know. No, I'm not Trinitarian. No, I don't believe in the triune God thing. I used to until I started studying Hebrew. So I'm not saying I'm good at Hebrew, not, but good enough to know and go back and tie it into everything I already knew about Athanasius and how Jerome was forced to put it into his second edition of the Vulgate that talked about, you know, their only proof text. They always go, oh, there's three that agree, you know, that's made up out of whole cloth. So no, I don't do that much anymore. So what is the Talmud anyway? I know their Tanakh is just their other word for like what we call the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses. So that's interesting.
And whether you're wrong or not, I applaud the effort, because that's how we grow and that's how we learn. And then you can't be wrong until somebody can show you why you're wrong and can come up with this.
Look, he has every right to look that confident because we've never been wrong yet. It's true.
That's why I asked you about your pushback. Are you coming up with, and if all these pushback, the questions came.
Surprising. I thought I would get a lot. I thought I would get a lot more, but it may be that it just hasn't come out into the mainstream enough. And once it does, then, you know, people start making debunk videos and you know, call me a crackpot. And I would say, you know, these are exciting times because there are a lot of you know, what do you say, sacred cows that are starting to be questioned, and we're learning more and more all the time about the nature of our physical reality and you know, all kinds of different aspects of the physical world. And so one of the things that I've tried to encourage people to do is don't take my word for any of this stuff. Look at the information that I present, go out and test things yourself, see if you find things, you know, because with the heart stones, the thing that's unusual about them is they're very, very specific. You know, it's easy to find a stone that's that's an oval shape or a sphere or something like that. It's an entirely different thing to find something that has specific channels, exactly where they should be, has a particular form. And so that's what I show in Mud Fossils, The Heart of the Matter 1 and 2. I show people how to recognize the anatomy, I'm showing it with 3D rendering. I'm going inside, I'm showing the chambers. And then there's another video that I did that I showed earlier that was petrified organs, giant's hearts, because I'm finding them on larger and larger scales. Hold on, I'll show it. This is the biggest one I brought home. Try not to hurt myself, but this is the exact same shape. It's got the openings for the. Oh, I'm not even showing my screen, am I?
No,
Sorry.
you are.
Oh, I was. Oh, okay.
I can see you.
Oh yeah, I'm showing me now. Okay, so there's the artery openings. It's also got the aorta exactly where it should be. So I've shown this over and over again across all different sizes, and I teach people how to recognize them in petrified organs, giant's hearts, and how to spot them. And so they can go out and test this themselves. And I'm not saying that all rocks are organs by any means. Rocks are volcanic. They come from volcanoes.
No, they're not. Could be. They don't have to be organs. They can be leg muscles. If he was a great Jim, if he was a great repenter, he would have enough blood and that stuff in his muscles saturated it because they were all dying in a flood in emergency mode before the glittering sword hit the water and froze them in time for judgment. They swirled around like twigs in a lake that would be, stirring and draining out of 4 portals when God opened and then closed and then opened and then drained the depths of the ocean. They would have swirled and ended up in different places, collecting and bumping into things, breaking off. That mountain that he calls one elephant could be 14 Titan pieces. And I'm sure an elephant's going to land with its head sticking straight up. Like, look at me, I'm an elephant sticking straight up. And there's even a place where that was my tusk and this is my nose. There's no tusk. There's no nose there. It's what happens. Kobe is very, very interested. Matt, you make sure you take care and answer some of those questions if you can and things like that. And yeah, let's do that. I've got an idea. Why don't we introduce Cove to the fact that, you know what I've been saying? You got the money? My real name isn't Paco Taco. It's Alan Blaine Hughes. Why don't you do a Freedom of Information Act on my dad and me and see how long we've been into this militia, freedom, truth fucking movement that's all fake. Thank God I'm a pacifist and I've been teaching it for 7 years now. I want to play chess with them. Yeah, I'll show them how to get a game to draw real quick because we're not going to be fighting back. We're not going to draw a line in the sand and say, this is worth sacrificing our children for. That's not part of the plan. Live to live another day. You don't really own that home. You're fractionally reserved buying anyway. You're in the beast Leviathan system, admitting that men must have social order to rule over them as long as it's not the Bible. Forget it. Nothing else will work. You have one last generation. Because the rapture's not happening now. A rescue in 25 years is going to happen at Gog and Magog once we finish the mindset that affected the whole world, the last 45 years spoken of by Daniel the prophet, started on 9/11, 2001. That's when the world changed. That's when we lost. What happened? Oh yeah, there's no planes anymore. There were planes, right, there were planes. And we still live on a planet where petroleum dollars rule the world. Got it. I am on Matt's side. I don't think he's trying to put words in your mouth. I think, you know what, Cove, you have to understand, we have been attacked here many, many times, and their usual pattern is deny, counter accuse, deny. So answer straight up questions and everything will be good going your way. And you'll be like, hey, that's cool, man. Thanks for a straight answer to a straight question. Because I know Matt. Okay? So he's going to give you a straight answer to any straight question you ask. And until I see it wrong.
Some maybe fragmented portions of Titans that I mean, this mountain that I studied it's 2.5 miles long, 4 kilometers, and it's 2,500 feet high. So it's not a small creature. So, and
I confirmed to Mike in a chat when he asked me directly when I was chatting with people, and that's how we got to that Francis Schaeffer stuff. And you know, that's how we got there. What was I saying? It was that I told him just last week. I think that the Titans could be anywhere from 3 to 8 miles. I don't care. I just know they were big, big, big. They were Elohim, for crying out loud.
Very strange. It's a different look. We're almost microscopic if those are the size of the animals. So interesting. Okay, so they can get to your channel, Stellium7. Do you have a website or just a YouTube channel?
not yet. I don't have a website. Just
That's
the
okay.
YouTube channel. I've got. I put them on BitChute because after the editing of Paranoid, so the videos are up there. People are welcome to mirror them if they like. And then I'll be eventually doing a website, and I've got a book planned, but I'm finishing another book right now that I started a long time ago. So that comes first.
Well, I'm sure you're finding people have a lot of interest because it's a new out of the box thing, and things are making sense. I mean, I would like to hear some more pushback, not from others, so that it can get flushed out even more. But at this point, if every time someone's coming at you, you look into it and you find the answers for it, that's cool. That means, okay, maybe you got something here. This is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem from the mainstream geology side is that these ideas, if there's truth to them, they completely, they shake the foundations of what we know about geology, what we know about petrogenesis, which is the formation of rock. So it can't be accepted. It's way too out there. So that's why I've been trying to teach people how to see these things, and maybe I'm just teaching them my delusions, but I don't think so. They can decide for themselves.
They can decide for themselves and look at it. It's another way of looking at things. Well, thank you so much. This is such an exciting, very interesting topic.
Somebody close to them just recently got busted, and the
rewards levels.
Let's check out something.
Thanks for watching.
Would call it, it's a cat bobcat. We didn't even know they lived around here. But they're range 25 to 30.
We now have 2 cameras set up for watching the wildlife around where we live.
Stones. Well, there's one. Isn't this like a stone I would show you? Because it's fossilized. And these are what they look like. And a lot of people would call it, oh, it's some sort of petrified wood. But you know what it seems like is happening, everyone? And I can say this to whoever's watching. When science wants to test something like what Roger Spur and I find, and Dr. Mike Wilkerson from Spain, and we say that, you know, we found a bone and we want it tested. Hey, Matt T, good to see you, brother. Nobody to moderate so far that's causing any trouble, but keep your eyes peeled, brother. You don't know what's going to happen. Could be dozens of people in here. I just showed a bone, brother. You've seen these rocks. A Denisovian bone. It's not petrified wood. And those type of things that they allow Roger Spur at one time, and then, oh, no, you have to be a scientist and be able to say it's a Neanderthal.
Then they'll test your bone
The
for
Hobbit, a Denisovian, Homo erectus of some sort. We're going to learn all about it today, man, because they got, you know, these are stones. These are the different stones of, you know, since it's only been since 2004 that they're realizing, oh my goodness, there's this RNA DNA of, you know, 20% of Neanderthal DNA survives in modern humans. Some people have up to 2%. It sure is every fulfillment of Genesis 6, then and now. And it does lead credence that if they could be fossilized by the glittering sword, it proves that they were in that time frame of when they were telling everybody of, I think, since they started discovering the giant lizards right after the 1711 loosing of Satan, I think they just had maps. Go here to this mountain, pull out this and that, and you'll see great lizards. When really all that was the inner workings, organs, body parts of.
Why do people say my eyes are two different colors? They are barely two different colors. That's crazy. I don't even see it hardly.
The big Titan Nephilims who were warned, you're going to die like men. So they were, at some point before this voided beginning, frozen in judgment. That's where I'm going, man. Okay, I got to get back to here, exposing these hobbits before I get sidetracked and turning this into a who's funnier, me or Matt G. I don't want to lose a contest live here. Yeah, I got Facebook going too, Matt, but nobody, it's all 5 people from YouTube right now. Nobody's watching on Facebook. Facebook's dead, man. It's all meta. It's all meta. And since I'm not going meta or even know what it really means, we're kind of stuck looking at like, hey, that's a bone, man. Look at all these fossils. They are bones, man. And don't confuse when we get to, you know, Peking Man. You know, like if I wanted to look up Peking Man, don't confuse that with Piltdown Man. Now I know that both the Peking Man and the fake Piltdown Man were, you know, brought about by a tooth, but there really does look like there's a Peking Man, and it, you know, these hobbits and things, man.
There's DNA, man. They will track you because
there's a hobbit thing.
You can deny there's DNA. I don't even believe in DNA. They'll track you. They know it's you, man.
Flores Island in Indonesia, and recently. All of this is new about 10, 11
Yeah.
years before the stones
Just so you people in the chat know that when I'm sharing, I can't see the comments.
crying out to do re mi. I mean, you know who. That was a non-hominin attack, not an ad hominem attack. Come on, Matt G. Look here's where they found them. They found some regular human fossils on the top, but they kept digging at the Langbu cave. They're
Hobbit.
short. Their feet aren't that big, and they just look big compared to their short legs. Look, they know all about small heads. What's happening? Skull.
What in the world?
Gonna fly now. Yeah. Flying high now. Do. What did they do? Find knives? We'll read a little bit.
Basic introductory courses, and I was, surprised to discover that there were fossils of things other than dinosaurs. I mean, it should have been obvious, but somehow I fell into that, that easy.
All right, especially if they all got hit by the glittering sword, doobie-doo, sword. This is from Nature magazine. The Nature magazine, the peer-reviewed. They believe that they were small-bodied hominin fossils from Flores. In 2004, they announced the discovery. You got hobbits. About 3.5 feet tall, about 106.
What I'm trying to prove here is that this is why we find all different sizes of hearts and everything, because they weren't supposed to interbreed, but they did. All of the ones that the Titans, Jesus had his people, the Hebrews, and everybody else had their peoples, and they weren't supposed to interbreed, but they did. Too late now. We're still human. We're still human, all of us, no matter what color we are. Whether we're beautiful or ugly, we're only beautiful or ugly skin deep. It's what's in your heart. You cannot carry anything with you. We have been told to build up gold, silver, and precious stones in our heart. Things that can survive the fire.
Oregon, the glittering sword, the Bible's true, hallelujah.
Modern day humans could even struggle to comprehend. Wait till you hear this. So, the view was unearthed in 1885 in modern day Austria. On cracking a sea of coal in Austria, a minor accident discovered one of the most remarkable artifacts. Basically, an iron cube was recovered from inside the coal. It had many cracks and little holes in it, as well as a strange color. The Natural History Museum in Vienna concluded the cube was of artificial origin from an unknown source and was no less than 60 million years old. Does that not just blow your mind, or what? How could a piece of iron have been carved millions of years before the first humans walked the earth? Scientists and experts have been trying to explain this anomaly for the last 100 years.
Body part.
There's no logical explanation that falls in line with our education process. Initially, the object did not seem remarkable, but it did seem to be purposely carved from a single piece of iron. Or, this in itself was unusual, and it was later estimated that the pole that had completely surrounded it was at least 60 million years old. Crazy, right? Surely we must appreciate that on the grand scale of time, that we are nothing but a small dot on white sheet of paper, something like that anyway. What do you guys think of South Earth Cube? Are there any more likely scenarios? Thanks for watching.
I think that was a filler video.
The landlord regime for a socialist revolution, nor is the present life and development of the Kazakhstan Republic properly reflected in the museum exhibits. Most of them are said to be dealing with the past.
Let's look up a Bible verse. I just want to see, we're going to go, I don't know, 22 minutes. I wanted to keep this, interesting for all of the Hobbit watchers of the world that might turn in later. Now they got all that Hobbit info. Now I want to show a Bible verse. See, that's how, I'm not trying to trick them. This is a Bible show. Check this out. Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind.
You know what? I should have read the New Living Translation too. That's when the Most High, El Elyon, assigned lands to the nations. He divided the human race. He separated them.
He fixed the borders of the people according to the number of
the Elohim.
Elohim. Who wants to bet me that far? He separated the nations, the Most High. He divided the inheritance to the sons of God. Does this mean God? God's angels, Israel. Well, let's see what this word God strives. So what's going on in that verse? 32:28. It has the word L in it.
I'm looking up the wrong verse. I'm a dummy.
Have their DNA in us if we were made from people made in this image. The next time that
I think I'm looking up the wrong verse. Let's see if I catch myself and or if I try to cover it up. Was I looking at when he separated the nations, the Most High, he divided their inheritance to the sons of God according to the number of the peoples. Now that's 5197. We better look it up. Look at that one, the rock. His word is perfect. That's the way I like to look at things. Lean that way. Was it 8? The Most High gave the nations their inheritance when he divided mankind. He fixed the borders of the people according to the number of the sons of God. Now, when their God had found them in a desert land, the Lord alone guided him. No foreign God was with him. Does that mean idol or Elohim? It's an L. There was no foreign God. priest of the Most High God, the El Elyon God, so it is a God, but not the Most High God, who is the possessor of heaven and earth. When used in that combination, it means the Spirit God. The Most High God of Melchizedek, the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, the one that is the highest above all everything. Now, what was he doing? Dividing the nations. Fixing borders. He made him ride on high places of land, and he ate the produce of the field. He suckled him with honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock. This is not a good thing to do. Don't forsake the God who made him. Here's what happens. They stirred up jealousy with strange gods. They sacrificed to demons that were no gods, to gods they had never known, to new gods that had come recently, whom your fathers had never dreaded. You were unmindful of the rock that bore you, and you forgot the God who gave you birth. I just want to look that one up too. Foreign gods. One of one occurrence. Strange incense. Strange fire. The layman. No layman will eat it, no stranger. There has to be a separation if you're going to be holy. Let's just look at the rock. The rock that bore you. Now remember, where did we start? What was the very first that? Job. This is an interruption on my video, huh? Going to go to 38. I think that's where we started out here today. The bars in order. Now, I don't want to, the clay under the seal is really interesting, but now that's not what I'm looking for. Nor the gates of the deep darkness. Nor the storehouses of snow and the storehouses of hail. We'll be seeing those things soon enough. We know that waters can become hard like stone. This is a very interesting, mentions Pleiades and loose the cords of Orion. Very much acknowledging that they understood the thing. But today's, if people go back to the first verse I think I shared today, it had to do with who can tilt the water skins of heavens when the dust runs into a mass and the clods stick together fast. Like what I'm saying happens when, you know, the body parts of the Nephilim were frozen in judgment, like in an agitating washing machine times Google with 4 exit holes, and things were being shifted around. Mud flood was Armageddon. What is that dust? We're not looking at the clods or the clumps, but the dust. It takes us to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, when the Adam from chapter 2, not the Titans that were made in the image, male and female, God created them. In Acts chapter 2, there was no man to till the ground, it explains in Genesis 2, verse 5. And in verse 7, our Elohim, Jehovah, took that same dust and made a ha'adam, a man for sure, but not created, formed. This is so much different. I hope that I can't say you have no idea anymore. Huron mud flood was Armageddon, formerly Flat Earth Nation. We need and we are trying to rightfully divide the word of truth, especially these words and this one. Verse 5, there was no this Adam to cultivate the ground, so we got made in 2. And the woman wasn't made till after he named the animals, had the trees planted and grown in the garden. And God saw twice he needed a mate, and then he created one from his rib that didn't need the breath of life blown into her. And what was that breath of life? Four times for this exact word, the breath of life started with right there into that nostrils of the breath of the spirit, that spirit of the man, that lamp, that candle, that spirit we share. If our heart has been changed and we can confess with our mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord. The full context of the word. That is that breath of life in Genesis 2:7. You have that. The gospel may be the stench of death, but it may be the breath of life. As always, I invite you, if you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and you've yet to confess it, do that right now. Say it out loud. Call somebody in from the kitchen or the other room and just tell them, you know what? Jesus is Lord. I can't hide it.
Has the word El in it. When he divided their inheritance, you know who they're talking about? Jacob's brother. Ishmael.
Oh, I think I made a mistake here.
Getting exciting. He found him in a desert land in the howling waste of the wilderness. Abraham's going like, thanks. He encircled him. He cared for him. He kept him as the apple of his eye, as he did David. Like an eagle that stirred up its nest, that flutters over its young, spreading out its wings, catching them, bearing them on its pinions. That's how, when God really says, how long I would comfort you, I mean, my goodness, you know I've spent hours trying to figure out what a pinion is.
It's a feather
Carrying
type
them
thing.
on its wings. It's pinion?
What do we got going here? So that's 3 hours, huh? Let's see what you got here. Same thing. Princes and powers and principalities of, you know, that realm. That's it, you know. Yeah, and they were Elohim. They were Elohim, but they weren't the creators. They were created, and they should have said something when Satan's plan turned out to be like, you know, oh, you want to go and like kind of like do something to Job? Yeah, I want to kill him. The other angels, why are we going to be judging them? Well, some of them should have spoke up. I think that's probably going to be the root of their problem, right? Is that, what were you thinking? You didn't go like, whoa, 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 hey, hold on, wait a minute. Why? Well, we know that these powers and principalities that be suck. They're not good at it. They're not Jesus. Psalm 82. You're not a God. You're not a God in the flesh. But there was a time in Psalm 81 when the Elohim of the divine council of the congregation, they met with God. But some gods met with another gods. And he got right on him. How come you do the wrong thing? Psalm 82. God has taken his place in the God council. In the midst of the gods, it said, Elohim, Elohim, Elohim. He holds judgment because he's the creator God in charge, saying, what have you been doing? How long, well, you know, how long is this going to go on? You're showing partiality and doing everything wrong. And when Jesus was quoting to the scribes and Pharisees, when they said no one can forgive it like God, he said, hey, you know who I am. And that there are people that this is my spirit, and now I am one of those. I am. You knew that they were gods, and now I'm telling you the same thing. I'm God in the flesh. That's why this book is in the Old Testament. It's why Jesus quoted it in the New. They knew exactly what they were, not us. But, you know, they believed that they were children of El Elyon. But they've been ruled by bad gods. They're not good gods. But now they're going to be corpus delicti as men. That was a previous judgment when that sin happened. They're going to fall like princes and die like men. This covers all your men. And that's all of us. We can all be saved if you're on this list. We're on the list. We got it. We made it. We can be saved. I don't care how much they monkeyed with us or whatever. Because we have one thing that can't be denied. We'll take a look. Listen to Tommy's dog snore. Let's go down here to verse 65. We'll start at the end of 64. For Jesus knew from the beginning those who did not believe, and even who it was that would betray him. Verse 65. And he said, this is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted him by the Father. Many people hate that sentiment. And even back then, after he said that, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him because they want to think that they're the center of God's attention. Human beings are the center, number one thing. That's all that God talks about, thinks about, breathes about. And they err because they know not the scriptures, that they never read the second part of verse 8 in 1 John 3, or they'd realize that the Son of God appeared. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. And the devil had affected many people since then. And he affected angels that are in heaven. So it's been 7 minutes since somebody posted a comment. It's down to showing me there are only 2 people, when that was a very good summation of where we're at and what's happening. And now it's down to 1. So that was the layout right there. And somebody just got in and checked in after it just got laid out after 3 minutes, 13 seconds. And 12, you can see we had people in, had up to 12 and 11, but then all of a sudden everybody went away. And I have no idea literally how long I was talking to myself, but I don't care. I'm laying this all out. I'm shouting from the wall through the smoke right now. The way it feels is that there are other people saying everything else and people are listening and the fire's burning and I'm going like, here's the fire. And I just clicked off of it. When I was talking to you before, there were 12 people and I come back after 10 minutes of showing Bible scriptures and there's nobody. I get it, Coyote Bones. I get it. It's just that I probably, have gone too long again. If you haven't taken off your hat, I'd like everyone to join me in prayer. I know. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for a chance to share. I pray for the people traveling like Tommy and Kathy. I pray that you will help me to be a productive worker for you today. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to thank you for being here, and everything you should study here that has been presented and take it to heart. It's a flat earth nation. You know, I'm never going to tell you anything else. Why would I? I'm trying to prove that I have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho.